It is time for Live Before Lock right here at Awesemo.com. That is the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. Hopefully everyone's having a good Saturday afternoon, early evening. I will tell you, Pete, about 2 hours ago, I was like, really not liking this later start time. I enjoy the 4 p.m. Eastern time prelim start.
Yeah, I think we're spoiled right now, Jason. And let me tell you that I was bored today, man. I'm like, dude, I need the Live Before Lock show. I need to answer some questions, engage with the audience. I want to see where your head's at. And I want to watch some fights. Like, let's get this show going. 8 o'clock? What are we doing?
I've literally been sitting here in my office for like 2 hours going, is it time to start the show yet? Is it time to start the show yet?
Same, bro. Same.
But, of course, we do have a lot to discuss here as we take you up to the start time here, 8 p.m. Eastern time for the prelims, of course, 10 p.m. for the main card. And obviously the big news, I think I was pulling into Target yesterday and I looked down my phone. Pete texts me. It's probably never a good sign. It's like, just after noon on weigh-in day when Pete's texting me and I was like, well, we lost a fight.
Yeah, and why am I not surprised? You're a FanDuel guy. You're a Target guy. I understand you, man. And, every single time I'm trying to talk to you, you're at Target. It's crazy. You might want to get some stock in Target over there, Jason.
Yeah. I'm by the way, it's Target.
Okay.
Get it right, Pete. Target.
Goodness.
Yeah, it's but yeah, it was had to stop in to get some things there, but obviously Curtis Blades all off this fight card, and due to COVID, and I think one of the things, and I mentioned this in Slack, I think that when you think about this, is to me, my initial thought was, and talk about the effect of this, is that it makes roster construction easier.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of takes away that main event underdog happening, where Derek Lewis is super underpriced for a 5-round event. Obviously, I favored Curtis Blades in the matchup, but it definitely makes the landscape a little bit different. Obviously, the new main event of Anthony Smith, Devin Clark definitely adds a twist to both of those fighters. And it definitely makes me want to be exposed to some fights that I really wasn't too exposed to prior. We'll get to that, but it changes things. It definitely changes things.
Yeah, I would say, because I am playing, I'm probably paying just as much in cash today as I am GPP, but in cash, I was probably going to be 90% Curtis Blades.
Yeah, I was going to be aggressive with Curtis Blades as well. I just think stylistically it was a tough matchup for Derek Lewis. It's a bummer that Curtis, got COVID and they couldn't find a replacement for Derek Lewis, but I think it's a matchup that not a lot of people were really jumping at, that not a lot of people want to take Derek Lewis on short notice, never mind with a full camp. But regardless, we're here. Not the most exciting main event of Anthony Smith, Devin Clark. Anthony Smith definitely has the edge in terms of experience and in 5-round fights. I mean, he's been beaten up quite a few times in them, but at least he has that experience of being in there. Devin Clark, neither one of these guys trained for 5 rounds, Jason. So, we'll have to see. Maybe the elevation helps Devin Clark in this situation.
You can be financially motivated to take 5 rounds.
Yeah, exactly. Let me tell you, if the UFC, if any place was offering me 5 rounds, I'm saying yes to that, because you get a couple zeros added. So
a little more coin going into your bank account when that direct deposit goes through. Yeah, it's that is definitely part of what goes on there. But to me, like, the reason Curtis Blades said I would say that I was going to be overexposed on him in cash was, part of it was simply that I felt that, especially in some of these smaller cash pools where everyone was going to be on Curtis Blades. So my initial thought is, let me just put him in there, and then in case he goes out there and gets you 130, 140 points, which we have seen him do in the past. I mean, now you look at this fight card, and I definitely do not see someone that I believe can go out there and get 140 plus points. Of course, something I should note, if you want to check out our projections over at Awesemo.com, MMA projections are free today, so you can check it out right there at Awesemo.com. Also, free content up there is the NFL Top Stacks tool, and of course, if you're looking to place a bet on these fights, we got Odd Shopper over there, so be sure to check all that out right now over at Awesemo.com. Of course, you see Pete's heat sheet up on the screen. You can also check that out over at Awesemo.com. Let's talk about top targets under 8,000 on DraftKings. Let's start off on DraftKings. By the way, if you do have a question, leave those right now in the YouTube chat and our premium Slack account. Of course, if the questions that come in our premium Slack account do take priority. But top targets under 8K, we don't have a ton of targets we can go at 8K just because of, we lost the 82,000 fight. So you look at the under 8,000 options. We got Devin Clark at 7,700, Parker Porter 7,200, Takashi Sato 7,500, Bill Algeo 7,300, Norma Dumont 7,900. She missed weight by 3.5 pounds. There's a very interesting piece on MMAfighting.com that was posted before the weigh-ins where it mentioned 4 days out from weigh-ins that she was 13.2 pounds over for making weight. So I think that's something to consider there. You got Anderson Dos Santos, 7,400. I know Josh talked about him a lot in his Contender Series videos that he put out there. Rachel Ostovich, 7,600. Jonathan Pierce, 7,000. Malcolm Gordon, 7,100. And Joseph Manis at 7,800.
Yeah, so let's start at the top and let's go with the 5-round fight, Devin Clark, Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith recently has been on a rough patch, and Devin Clark, has some notable wins in the division. Definitely on paper shouldn't be Anthony Smith, but as far as momentum, he has the momentum advantage. And Anthony Smith is really feeling like his back's against the wall. What I'm talking about, like in keeping his ranking and keeping that, that notoriety of his style of that legend killer and being a finisher, 91% finish rate in his career. So I think that Devin Clark is somewhat appealing, even though I don't think that he's the most skilled fighter. And stylistically, I don't really worry about Anthony Smith too much because, Devin Clark will press against the cage, work for takedowns, but it's not like he has some outstanding ground and pound that now I have to worry about Anthony Smith getting glovered. I don't really see that happening, but let me tell you, I did put Devin Clark in several lineups, and I maxed out on 150 today. So I think I have Devin Clark in like 20, maybe 25, just because I wanted to get a little different, mix it up a little bit out of the 7K options. I think the value's there. I just don't really know if it reaches championship rounds. I mean, that's kind of, I don't know. Can Devin Clark avoid a big shot from Anthony Smith for, 15 minutes? And then we're starting to talk about, getting into the championship rounds. As far as like fights to target, I do think the Porter Parisian fight is definitely GPP potential. Parisian should have the advantage there in regards to, striking and, top game. But I watched some footage today that when Parisian's put on his back, granted these fights are like 4 or 5 years ago, that Porter has a really good ground game. And if he could ever put him there and not stand and trade, all it takes is one knockdown or a slip or whatnot. If Porter gets on top of you, it makes things interesting. So I'd say Porter at 7,200 is in my pool. I don't really have too much Takashi Sato just because I favor Baeza so much, but I understand. I think another chalky but interesting one is Bill Algeo. And I think a lot of people are going to be on him based on Carlisle's style of running out of gas within 2 rounds and potentially taking over as the fight goes on. I don't think it's an easy fight by any means, but that's another one. I do have Pierce circled, that Kamaka Pierce fight circled, because I don't want people to really think that Pierce is horrible, because he's not. He went out there and had an outlier poor performance against Joe Lozon, who absolutely destroyed him. But Kamaka only has a 13% finish rate in his career, and these guys both go forward. They're 2 bulls. So I expect fireworks, and I do think that Pierce is the taller guy, and that's definitely a matchup that I'm targeting. So I would say Pierce is another 7K guy that I'm looking at.
I want to mention a question we got earlier today from Brian in our Slack channel. First off, his first question was thoughts on Dumont coming in well overweight. That's a big concern, and I would say reading that article that was on MMAfighting.com, a lot of concern there. Really makes you wonder as the fight does progress. Of what will she potentially look like in the second and third round. I mean, I was already on Evan Smith in this one. Look, to me, it's much more of a cash games play than it is a GPP play, just because, the likelihood is this thing's going 15 minutes, most likely. But to me, the weight has really said I believe Evan Smith is the right side to play.
Yeah, so that matchup is kind of like a matchup I don't really want to get involved with because I feel like I just don't know enough about it. And I limited my exposure to that fight because I feel like I don't want to be disappointed. Evan Smith on paper should win the fight. This girl Dumont has so many unknowns regarding, surrounding her, unknowns regarding her training, unknowns regarding her professional career. Like fight footage was very tough to find on her. Training footage is difficult to find outside of her Instagram. You could see some stuff, but what does that really tell you? She's coming in with that unknown factor, and that is dangerous when you're fighting somebody because obviously they could surprise you. Evan Smith should win the fight based on her UFC experience. She's 3-4 in the UFC. Dumont got clipped and knocked out pretty early against Megan Anderson, but the weight miss concerns me. It does. How serious was she taking training? What happened? An injury? You throw a monkey wrench into a fight that I really had limited exposure to begin with. Now it makes me really not want to be on it. So maybe if you want a GPP edge, you target one of these two fighters. But for me, I kind of stood back and let other people waste their money on it.
The other question that Brian asked, he says the ramifications of Smith Clark now being a 5-round fight, and is there any different in the approach? I mean, I think as a 3-round fight, I didn't look at it as something that I was going to have maximum exposure to.
Yeah.
But now being 5 rounds is interesting, and we were going to mention prop bets here before we get into questions. So you remember on the strategy show I mentioned the prop bet of Anthony Smith to win by decision was like plus 300, plus 325, plus 350, somewhere in that range. Now, if you want to think this thing can go 25 minutes, plus 565 Anthony Smith to win by decision.
Yeah, because the likelihood is that somebody's getting finished within 25 minutes. Anytime you're above 205 pounds or at 205 pounds, the likelihood of it going the distance is always slim, or it's slimmer compared to the lighter weight classes. Now, the style, the history of Anthony Smith, 91% finish rate. I think he finds a shot and hurts Clark. I mean, Clark has been hurt and rocked and dropped and finished in several fights. You think about the Alexander Rakic fight, obviously knocked down Rakic a few times. Then was on the receiving end of some blows and then finished via ground and pound. Justin Clark's most recent fight, he had his opponent, who was it? It was Alonzo Menafield, big KO guy. There was a moment where it looked like Devin Clark was going to get finished and got hit with a couple shots and broke his face, actually. And, he kind of shelled up and held his face. And obviously, it's very painful. I broke my orbital once in a fight. It's very painful, but the reaction of not liking to get hit is always something that I try to, avoid targeting those fighters. And I do see that same thing in Clark that I saw in Jordan Wright. Is that him from last week? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, for me, it's Clark sprinkled in, but I am favoring Anthony Smith at 8,500. I think it's a discount, 5-round potential. Obviously, if it's a low volume affair and a late finish, you're not going to have the best score. But you can't always predict this with like a crystal ball. I think he's in a good spot.
Appreciate everyone that's in the YouTube chat right now. Got over 400 people there in the YouTube chat. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button. Also, if you're not subscribed to Awesemo on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell so you know when a new show is live on the channel. Of course, tomorrow we'll have a ton of NFL coverage for you in the morning to get you ready for, what are we, week 12?
Yeah, I think, right?
It's a long grind for me, man. I live in a week to week world, Usually that's when I get that memory card before the game, I go, oh, we're okay. Oh, that's the week we're in. Okay, yeah, but we'll get you ready for tomorrow's NFL action. Let's talk about FanDuel and top targets under $15. And to me, I think you got to start with Ashley Evans Smith at $14.
Yeah, I think FanDuel just tried to trick you guys. We don't know Dumont, and there's no way that FanDuel really knows Dumont either. I think they just kind of, women's MMA, let's just flip the salaries and be different. And I played a FanDuel lineup. Actually, I'm actually on FanDuel for once, and I put Evan Smith in there just because in that range, it's like, okay, I could take some real GPP shots on other fighters or a potentially safe win if all things go correct. Evan Smith at 14 is a discount. Who else?
Well, I think I mean you talked about Rachel Ostovich at $11, especially
Yeah.
and speaking about FanDuel, what if Gina Mazzani's going for a ton of takedowns and Rachel can stop him? She can add some points up that way.
Yeah. So let's talk about that fight real quick because I was so confused by the odds. And now I kind of just I revisited this situation. That's what I do from our Wednesday show to Saturday. I try to dig and find out more and more. Mazzani, used to fight 135 pounds in a very physical division for the women's MMA division, and she was kind of getting bullied in that division. So I think she was planning on dropping down. She dropped down and made weight, looked pretty good. It actually looked really, really good. She looks cut up and looks like super defined. I wonder how bad the weight cut was. Like if it was a super struggle and it's going to fatigue her as the fight goes on. Because you can look amazing on the scale, but you have to bring that into the cage. Whenever you're dropping down, not moving up, it's always in an experimental phase. You don't know how your body's really going to react. I've had fights where I've had great weight cuts, and then I've had fights where I've cut a lot of weight, and thankfully it went well, but I felt zapped in certain periods. Now, I do think that fight is closer than my first impression on it because Mazzani is coming from a good camp with James Krause. James Krause can literally teach anybody in the chat in here if they don't know how to fight. If you have James Krause in your corner, you have an edge. Like you really have an edge. Ostovich, I still think has the jiu-jitsu advantage. I really do. And Ostovich isn't bad. I mean, she's a pretty girl, but don't just think that she's just all looks. Like the girl can fight, has good takedowns. If she's on bottom and on the receiving end of ground and pound, obviously she'll probably lose some rounds to the physical Mazzani. But Mazzani makes a ton of mistakes. So hopefully, you have some exposure to both sides. I actually have several lineups with Mazzani, several lineups with Ostovich because of the price. FanDuel, Ostovich at 11. It's a coin flip fight, Jason. Not really one of my favorite fights to target just because of the other unknowns.
Look, I think that on FanDuel, that under $15, I think there's several people that you can look at. If you think Parker Porter's going to pull off the upset, $8. I mean, that's to me, Parisian Porter is a GPP fight. I don't really love it for cash, just because of its heavyweight MMA. You look at Algeo at $10. He sticks out to me. I think Anderson Dos Santos is more of a cash games to pill in your lineup. Potentially, maybe he can get you some points there. You mentioned about Ostovich, Jonathan Pierce at $8. Those are the ones that stick out to me when we're talking about under $15 on FanDuel. We always like to give some advice to our single entry players in terms of this one. And when I'm building my single entry lineups, I'm taking give me a high end option, give me a low end option. I kind of work from there. So I will tell you my low end option that I've been building lineups around, and hopefully this doesn't bite me in the butt in the end, has been Bill Algeo, whether we're talking DraftKings or on FanDuel.
Yeah, I like what you're saying there, and I think it's going to be a common build. I think a lot of people will reach towards Algeo because he looked good in his previous performance against Ricardo Lamas. Ricardo Lamas is not a slouch by any means, and he looked really, really good. And at periods of it, he definitely could have won the fight. It's the style. Carlisle is super physically imposing. He likes to take people down, likes to hit them with unorthodox techniques. But he's a round one, first half of round two type of guy. Algeo over the course of 15 minutes should have the edge. I just hope that he's able to avoid getting put in a submission or in a bad spot with a very physically imposing Spike Carlisle. I don't really love Spike Carlisle at 8,900 because Bill Algeo is so experienced. I mean, 13-5. He has 18 fights to Spike Carlisle's 11. Spike Carlisle is 9-2. I think it's a great build, a great strategy. I think Algeo in terms of cash, in terms of cash for 7K guys, I think it's going to be pretty common to see either Clark or Algeo involved.
Yeah, Den, appreciate he in the super chat even before we started the show, and he asked us what we thought about a Kamaka Pierce stack, also Carlisle Algeo. I don't mind a Spike Carlisle Bill Algeo stack in cash. I don't mind that one at all.
Yeah. So, great question. I love the questions, guys. Jason and I talk about how sharp you guys are. We love it. Love the engagement. I narrowed it down to, I think, 3 fights, right? Where I think only 3 fights, in my personal opinion, are stackable. Obviously, I don't stack, but if I was going to, these are the fights that I would target. I would say Carlisle Algeo fight is a stackable fight based on the style aggression. You saw Carlisle in his previous fight in a loss. He scored pretty well. Same with Algeo. The Kamaka Pierce fight, Pierce is stupid, dumb, cheap. And I do think that that fight could potentially be a stackable fight as well because they literally both bring it. And you saw how Kamaka responds in a situation like that in his fight against Tony Kelly. That's the second one. The third one, I'm not really in love with it because of the stylistic matchup, but I do think it's the main event. It's 5-round potential. Smith and Clark. I mean, if this does go into championship rounds, you have an argument there saying that it could be a part of an optimal lineup, but we'll have to see. But those are 3 fights that I actually think are possible stackable fights.
What concerns me about Devin Clark is because I think the path to victory for him is getting this fight up against the fence and making this a clinch fight, and that fight metric does not give him those significant strikes landed. So that is my like. I had a cash lineup initially where I was stacking the main event, and right before the show, I said, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. So hopefully that one doesn't come back to cost me in the end. It's one of those things with Devin Clark. Like, I understand why he has value, but also I can also see because of his fighting style that it may not equal the amount of points that maybe you'd hope for.
Yeah, it's a great point, Jason. It brings me to this, bringing up some statistical data to kind of back up our points. And Anthony Smith isn't terrible at defending takedowns. I know the metrics don't really give him a lot of love. 51% takedown defensive rating. He stuffed 1 out of 2 takedowns from Glover Teixeira. He also stuffed 5 of 8 takedowns from John Jones. So take that with a grain of salt. The guy definitely can defend some takedowns. And if he does that to nullify Devin Clark's style, Devin Clark's really not too appealing, but I do have some exposure to him.
Dude, it's $16 on FanDuel for Anthony Smith. How do you avoid that?
Yeah, I mean, it's mid-price for a main event. It's very, very difficult to get around.
Yeah, it's a tough one there. GPP and cash score. This is a question that I know Samuel brings up, pretty much every time we do a show. In terms of GPP, I think there's fights you have to look at. I think you got to look at Parisian Porter. I think you have to look at Baez and Sato. I think you got to look at Carlisle and Algeo. And probably more cash in this one would be Sue and Malcolm.
Yeah, so I took a really aggressive stance this week, and I'm in love with some people. There's some fights that I'm hammering, Jason. I'm hammering the Parisian Porter fight. I'm also hammering a fight I don't think that you would expect. And I could be wrong on this, but I'm hammering the Day Dos Santos fight. I really like that fight.
I think I like that fight really in cash. That's one that I'm looking at there. So that kind of labels out some of the fights to potentially target. How about so I was looking at the prop bets. Of course, you can check out prop bets over at awesemo.com, part of Odds Shopper. So I'll give you a couple in here. 2 on the main event and related to Anthony Smith. I mentioned about the decision prop plus 565 for him. Anthony Smith by TKO KO plus 275. Baez Sato under 1.5. I was surprised on this one. Plus 137.
Interesting.
I would have thought that had been minus money. I would have thought that. Baez by TKO KO plus 215. Kamaka by TKO KO plus 240. And Martin Day via TKO KO. This one might surprise you a little bit. Plus 472.
That's my sneaky play of the slate. That is my sneaky play of the slate. And I might be alone on the island. And sometimes, I go down with my ship if I'm wrong, of course. I'm not afraid to say who I like. I really like Martin Day here. And I think he's going completely, overlooked. I have plenty of exposure to him at 8,800. Let me back up my points. Really, really high volume. Like really, really high volume. Okay. Dos Santos's volume is really low because he really telegraphs everything that he throws, and he winds up and tries to knock people out with one shot. Obviously, when he lands, that works really well. But I like I like Martin Day here. I think he's going to out volume him, whether it's a decision. If it's a decision, I think he's going to go north of 100 points, 100 significant strikes rather. Um, and I think an eventual late TKO is not out of the question. I really like him.
Yeah. By the way, if you want to get access to our ownership projections, you got to sign up right now for an Also Plus weekly pass for $29.95. That gets you the Also Plus tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there, which gives you access to all of the premium content you see over at Awesemo.com, such as player projections, ownership projections, the top fighters tool, top players tool, and so much more. And if you're only looking for an MMA weekly pass, you can get that for $8.95. All you got to do is go to awesemo.com/join to sign up today. Or if you just go to awesemo.com, you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen, Awesemo Plus, you can sign up for a weekly pass. So be sure to check that out over there at awesemo.com. I think we got kind of pretty much through everything we wanted to talk about in terms of stacking the main event, which was something that I've kind of gone back and forth all day long. So we will get right now into the questions. Let's go over to our Slack out. KCMO checking in. He says on FanDuel, if Smith versus Clark was the original main event and was priced at $15 and $16, we would be dancing on the streets. Now it's a 5-rounder. It's a must roster on FanDuel.
Agreed. It's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know. I will be very interesting to see what the Smith ownership it looks like as MVP and utility. I did not put him at MVP in my FanDuel spots.
Yeah, I played one FanDuel lineup. I didn't put Smith in the MVP, but he was definitely involved in my lineup.
Yeah. Rob, no, it was Jason Garrett who mentioned this over on YouTube. He says, is Sato the KO upset contender?
He's in consideration. I talked about it on a strategy show of how Baeza is trained, under a great boxing mind. And I think being surrounded by a guy that understands boxing so well, you can really defeat that southpaw style of Sato. Southpaws generally have an advantage over orthodox fighters because it comes from different angles. I spoke of that. I will say Baeza does have a ground advantage as well, and we have seen Sato, despite his judo background, controlled on the ground, submitted on the ground, and I think a lot of people are kind of underestimating Baeza's submission ability. So Sato's in play. He's not a horrible play at all. Baeza is human and still green within the UFC, so I'm favoring Baeza, but I don't hate it.
William, appreciate you in the super chat. He says, who's the fade from the top most expensive fighters, both sides?
Well, let's look at DraftKings. So we have Parisian at 9K. I think that's a great spot. 9,200 for Kamaka on short notice. May look better on paper than really what it is because Pierce is not a slouch, despite, Pierce's defensive striking problem of getting hit so much. He is extremely aggressive. Muderji, as long as he avoids the ground with Gordon, he should have an advantage there. So, and then let's include Carlisle at 8,900. I do think that Carlisle, of those four I gave you, what I give you, 3 or 4, whatever. Carlisle is probably one of the worst options in that price range, in my opinion. But maybe pump the brakes on Kamaka. He doesn't really have the best finishing potential. I do have him in several lineups. It's just 9,200 is definitely not a spot for an insta win.
Over on FanDuel, in terms of the top ones, I kind of what you said about Kamaka there. He's not shown to be a finisher. That's the other thing that concerns me.
Yeah, and what's crazy is because in that fight against Tony Kelly, right, we brought up all those points and we're like, yeah, we like Tony Kelly, all this and that. Kamaka went out there and looked like a finisher. He just, for some reason, Tony Kelly didn't break. Tony Kelly's super tough, but Kamaka hit him so much. some metrics to back up your decision making of the 9K range. Parisian at 9K has a 92% finish rate. Kamaka at 9,200 has a 13% finish rate. That's in red. That's kind of like alarming. Muderji at 9,100 has a 92% finish rate. So take that for what it's worth, but I kind of like helping, that helps me a little bit when I'm in a tough spot of deciding.
By the way, our free MMA content of today over at Awesemo.com is MMA projections. So you can check out the projections for both slates, whether you're playing on DraftKings or whether you're playing on FanDuel. James says MVP on FanDuel, and this is an interesting one. Takashi Sato or Sumadarji?
Well, I think a lot of people will have Sumadarji. A lot of people will be rostering him because of the metrics I just told you. But I think Sato is an under-owned captain, probably. I don't hate it. If he wins, it's probably by finish. I don't see him beaten by his on the scorecards.
This is not really related to fights, but I'll mention in the comment. Machiavelli mentioning James Krause is the biggest Buckley hater. You got to remember, James Krause runs a gym. Joaquin Buckley used to train there. There's a reason that Joaquin Buckley's not there anymore. I guess that's about the best way I can put it.
I've had to throw a lot of people out of my gym.
I mean, look, if you listen to what Joaquin Buckley said last week, I don't think it's hard to figure out.
No, I mean, the guy likes to spar hard.
And there's, I think you mentioned this on the Wednesday strategy show. Yeah, there is a time to go hard.
Yeah.
But then there is a time where you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah. And not everybody likes it, but we're in a fight game.
You got to find the right gym that likes that. Like that's like old AKA mentality.
Yeah. I mean, AK is a great gym. So Krause is definitely a little bit of a hater, but I understand it. I love Joaquin Buckley though.
Yeah, I'm interested to kind of see how they move him along, because I think it's not quite that Hamzat Chimaev fast track, get him on the bullet train, but it definitely feels like they think they've got something there. Right. Next up, Lewis goes Dos Santos and Porter, or Pierce and Manis.
Not a big Manis guy today. I'm really not. He scored 45.5 DraftKings points in a win. That is like booty. That is bad, Jason. That is so bad. Let me click on the fight, right? So Johnny Munoz was definitely, a challenging opponent, right? Johnny Munoz controlled him on the ground for 9 minutes and 42 seconds. There was probably 27 groin strikes in that fight. So obviously that fight was super crazy and super weird. But Manis, he's not one of my favorite guys, man. Like, I think they got that. I think the line should be, much, much wider towards Sanders. I think Sanders is good. We have seen Sanders KO'd. So obviously people want to fade people that have been knocked out. I just don't really, I don't know. It's a matchup I'm not too heavy on.
Justin, I appreciate you giving me a little props there in the chat with some of my fighter interviews. By the way, just I guess a cheap plug for myself. Tomorrow on my podcast, the MMA Report podcast, two of my interviews will be fighters where we talking about on Wednesday, Pete. That is Justin James and Jordan Levitt. Spoke to both those guys on yesterday, so that'll be on the MMA Report podcast. Also be on my YouTube channel later on this week. By the way, Pete will we'll only be doing a show Wednesday next week. Pete and Josh will be doing Live Before Lock as it's the Bucks bye week, so a little family time for me.
Hey, I'm going to nickname you Hollywood because you're just too cool for this show nowadays. It's okay. Having a show with Josh was awesome. It was cool. It was a different perspective. I'm looking forward to it. But, next week's card, looking forward to hearing your insight with the people you interview.
Let's just say there will probably be when your guys are doing that show, there will be a cocktail in hand.
Nice.
Maybe I'll be sitting at the bar at the hotel bar. I'm just gonna pop up YouTube on my phone. Maybe I'll just start talking to you right there in the chat.
There you go.
I will troll you from the chat.
I like it. We got 541 people in here, guys. We appreciate you so much. You're hanging out with us before this late lock for the MMA slate. It's pretty crazy. If you wouldn't mind, hit that like button for us. Get us over 200. We appreciate it.
Thomas brings up the question on FanDuel of how much money is too much money to leave on the table for a GPP. I would tell you when I took out blades, and I forget who I replaced them with. I think I had $8 left over.
Man. Okay. Yeah.
Now, look on FanDuel. If you sit there and say, okay, I'm going to put Algeo in my lineup, I'm going to put Osevich in my lineup, and I'm going to put Evan Smith in my lineup, you can put whoever else you want in.
Yeah, this week the flexibility is crazy. Jason, the optimal lineup, was it last weekend? You know, when we sat there and we did that lineup rewind, right? How much salary was used in that? It was probably
It was DraftKings. I want to say it was 49.6.
okay. Yeah, so I would say, you know, anything within the 1,500 remaining salary is in the ballpark. You know, it's fine.
Marcos brings up the point. He goes, the great thing about this slate is that you can pick a dog and have a side for all the favorites. The issue is the variance is so high.
Yeah, that's what happens when you roster dogs, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, and look, and we've been in this stretch where you know it's been very favorite heavy, and the Vegas odd makers, you can definitely tell they've changed up their strategy a little bit in terms of that. Malik asked about the Sanders Manis fight, which you talked briefly about, and you know my feelings about playing the first fight of the night. I hate doing it because I swear more times than not I am on the wrong side.
Yeah, and you know, for me, these guys, right? 50% finish rate for Manis at 12-1, 69% finish rate for Sanders. You know, it's not the craziest. Nate Manis, obviously, it's matchup dependent, and you know, you can't take this, you know, this statistical data and apply it to future fights. But you know, Manis, he landed 21 significant strikes. 21. Granted, he was controlled on the mat and whatever, but I don't know. It's just not a fight that screams must roster.
Yeah, no, I am with you there. It's Legalize brings up Santos or Pierce DraftKings over from our premium Slack account. I would. Man, I might say Pierce.
Yeah. So okay, let me kind of, you know, back Dos Santos here just for, you know, the viewers, because I think that he's going to be a chalky play. I'm getting away from him because I feel really aggressive about Martin Day for some reason. What I saw on film and everything, I really like him. But Dos Santos in 20 victories, Jason, has an 80% finish rate. It's pretty damn good for that division. That's really good for a 135 pounder. Especially a guy that's priced down at 7,400. It's a very winnable fight. And Martin Day is 0-2 in the UFC. So is Dos Santos. I will say that I think Pierce is a little bit better because he has a finish rate potential of 89% of his 9 victories. And the way he goes about it, we did see Kamaka at times when Tony Kelly pressed forward, you know, he's human, obviously, so he did take a ton of strikes. If I look at the heat sheet right now, 7.6 strikes per minute of output for Kamaka, 7.6 strikes absorbed per minute from Kamaka. Pierce has 11.21 strikes output, 7.85 strikes absorbed. This matchup, I think you need this fight, and I have no problem getting to Pierce at 7K.
Next up was a question about best MVP play. So that's Aaron. So we'll start on the FanDuel side of it. I really like Miguel Baeza.
Yeah.
Now, the only thing that does concern me about him, and I'm sure you've seen this on film, doesn't necessarily put that chin down.
No, he doesn't put his chin down so much. I mean, he shoulder rolls a lot. He pivots a lot. So I think what he may miss on some things, he makes up with good fundamentals in the boxing department. And I think that his coach is going to have him prepared well. I do think that maybe Baeza Sato is somewhat of a letdown because both are tentative about getting knocked out, where I think Baeza is a good play. I think he's going to win the fight. I just don't know if it's going to be like sometimes sloppy fights make for great GPP fights. So the Kamaka Pierce fight, like that's a sloppy slugger type of fight that might do better than say a Baeza Sato. But if I had money and I could, bet on somebody straight up, I do like Baeza.
Looking over at the captain on DraftKings, Baeza,
Ooh,
he
I
is
didn't know that.
12,600. Maybe if you want to take Anthony Smith, 11,700. The top captain option is Kai Kamaka at 14,700.
I didn't even do that contest today. I wish I remembered.
I just you know this. I hate those captain contests on DK.
I started to fall in love with showdown contests, like in general. And this kind of has like a showdown feel to it. So if I put Mazzani 12K in the MVP, Baeza 12.6, in that situation, I prefer Baeza. Parisian 14-1. Anthony Smith at 11-7, Jason, for captain in a 5-round fight, I think is very, very appealing. And that's honestly where I'd probably go for that DraftKings captain contest.
Next up, Edward goes, thoughts on Sato. Everyone on Baez, and he looked like he was rocked against it with his fight with Matt Brown. I also think Brown made him look faster than he is. Sato has power. What do you guys think?
I think Baez is fast, and I think Baez is good. I think he's really good for 170-pound division. I will agree with saying that, matched up against some inferior opponents, obviously you look like a superstar. And I do think that he's very good. I don't know if he's superstar material. He's very, very good. Sato has been cracked, rocked, knocked out, submitted, all of that. I think it's a winnable fight for Baeza. And I'm not willing to fade an undefeated fighter just yet. I know that every undefeated fighter will have, a learning experience and have to suffer a loss. I just don't really know if this is the matchup for it.
And Loco checking in says, who's getting knocked the F out?
Well, what's up, News God? I think somebody in the Parisian Porter is just getting finished. I don't know if getting knocked out, but I think somebody in that fight's getting finished.
Yeah, there's a couple fights I really think getting the finish. Parisian Porter, Baez, Sato. I think those would be my top two. And maybe the main event. Because it's 5 rounds now.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Going down the questions. Of course, if you do have a question there in the YouTube chat, just hit that hit the poster right there. Of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. We've got over 550 people in here, 156 likes. Let's get those up over 200 here in the next 15 minutes or so. James asked about a Baez Sato stack.
Not a matchup that I think I would stack. And the reason being is I think we've seen Sato, when he gets hit by a big shot, he gets rocked and finished. And I think it's a situation where Baeza will crack him, rock him, and then sub him. The fight, he doesn't throw the best volume either. He's not nearly as aggressive as, say, a Matt Brown in their previous outing. I do think it's a good name for Baeza to fight. There are just other fights that I mentioned earlier in the show, a Kamaka Pierce, a Carlisle Algeo, possibly the main event of a stackable fight. That Baeza Sato, despite them being mid-priced, always when fighters are mid-priced, it's more appealing. I wouldn't stack that fight.
Of course, you are watching MMA Live Before Lock right here on Awesemo.com. If there ever comes a time that you're unable to watch us live, you can get the show as a part of the Awesemo Podcast Network. All you got to do is go to awesemo.com/podcast to find out where you can listen to your favorite podcast. It could be like myself this morning or early this afternoon. I'm cleaning out my garage. And I'm listening to Josh and his contenders talking about today's card. So be sure to check out all of our programming there, a part of the Awesemo Podcast Network. Thoughts on Rachel Ostovich?
Well, has a submission advantage, I believe, over Gina Mazzani. Mazzani is 1-4, hungry for a win in the UFC, another win in the UFC. Ostovich is much more than a pretty face. She is talented in the grappling department. Obviously, whenever you are a grappler, sometimes you're comfortable on your back. I hope that isn't the case for Ostovich of just getting ground and pounded. I'm really not believing the Gina Mazzani line so much. I do have her in some lineups. Not really my favorite fight to target. I know we might need it because it might be in the optimal because they both make plenty of mistakes. But I feel like there are some other 7K options that I feel a little bit better in, and I don't have to worry about an armbar from guard or something crazy like that.
Okay, so Bill has a point that has a question about Rachel Ostovich. More points on DraftKings, Ostovich or Parker Porter?
Well, I'll rephrase it like this: Porter has a higher ceiling than Ostovich, whereas Ostovich has a better chance of winning.
Yeah.
Right.
The thing with Parker Porter is he could get 100. He could get 3.
Yeah, and that's what happens in these spots of these GPP long shots. Now, Porter can be lulled into a brawl. I've seen it regionally. He's fought regionally. I am rooting for Parker Porter like you wouldn't believe. Um, but he loves to stand up and trade with people. He really does. But if he could ever get on top of people and use his ground and pound, I think that he could really start to make some strides. Maybe this is where he's made an adjustment in his camp. He talked about bringing in the PI and getting a nice a nice format and plan with dieting and training and all that stuff. So obviously he knows, like, I'm not trying to go 2 losses in the UFC and get booted. You don't always know if you're going to get 3 opportunities. So obviously he's probably going to see the best Parker Porter. I just still don't know if it's enough to get past Parisian.
I wonder where you heard that comment at.
I don't know. Some good reporter locally. I don't know.
Yeah, it's and of course Pete's referencing the interview that I had with Parker Porter, and I thought one of the most, because he talked about obviously he took his UFC debut on short notice and he was cutting from 290 to 265. As this time he was only cutting about 5 pounds to make weight, and that's what happens is when these fighters get in the UFC on short notice for their UFC debut is they get introduced to the PI, and all of a sudden they go through these testing. And all of a sudden, they kind of figure out what they have to do to maximize their body. Like next week, when we talk about Jordan Levitt, you do realize this is the first camp he's actually lifted weights.
Yeah. I mean, it's
How crazy
crazy.
is that?
Yeah, I know it is crazy, but it's crazy when you're introduced to the high level, right? So about 5 years ago when I went out and I trained with Cowboy, I thought I knew what hard training was. And then I really developed an understanding for hard training of how many training sessions you're going in and how much of strength and conditioning and cardio. Like literally, I could not believe. I'm like, this is why he was at the time an elite level fighter. And it really opened your eyes. And I think that's what the PI has done for a lot of fighters.
Yeah, it's the one of the things in my interview yesterday that I had with Jordan. He said he goes, man, this camp's been a little bit of an ego buster. He goes, I'm squatting this weight, and then I look over, and there's a fighter 125 pounds who's got like 3 times the weight on their back.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing with weights, man. It works for some fighters, it doesn't work for others, and you can't have an ego with weights because I know tons of chicks and smaller guys that lift a lot more than I do. It's all relative.
Yeah. Chris over in our premium slide count, Dos Santos or Algeo. I think everyone knows who I'm going to pick there, but to me, it's Bill Algeo.
I don't hate either, truthfully. I think an Algeo, it's a slight Algeo lean for me.
DraftKings GPP question here from Bowden. Malcolm Gordon or Jonathan Pierce?
I don't hate the Malcolm Gordon. I'm glad somebody brought that up, right? When you see 9K options priced against 7K options, obviously, don't always think that these 7K guys stink, because they don't. Gordon didn't have a great UFC debut at all, was submitted fairly quickly. But in this matchup against Muderji, he needs to get the fighter to his opponent to the ground immediately. Because if he stands up with Muderji could put his lights out, really could. Muderji at 125 pounds, how does he really look at 125 pounds? This is Gordon's weight class that Gordon enjoys. Gordon has a significant ground advantage here. The only way I see Gordon winning this fight is via sub. So if you're looking at prop bets and you want a long shot, Gordon via sub, I think, is the only option for him winning. I don't hate him at 7,100. I definitely have him in some lineups.
James says, so in 10 lineups on FanDuel, who is your hands down MVP?
Well, I probably wouldn't overthink it. I'd probably go Anthony Smith.
Bias for me. Or Baeza, excuse me. That's where I would go.
I don't hate it.
Oh, let's see here. Best bets for the fights tonight. Well, let's go over to Odd Shopper to look at the most up to date odds. So I do think there's some quality underdog plays here. Just pulling up the best odds here over at Odd Shopper. All you gotta do is go to Awesemo.com right there, top screen. You see Odd Shopper. Looking at the best odds. Miguel minus 193 definitely sticks out to me. Anthony Smith minus 136. I think is a good line. You probably got to, you got to hop on that while you can. And Bill Algeo plus 155 is another one that sticks out to me.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that Smith line, right? I think the disrespect has maybe gone a little bit too far for Anthony Smith, because if you think back, obviously hindsight 2020, right? Everybody can say that for any fighter, any sport, whatever. He was almost a 3-1 favorite over Glover Teixeira. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Now he's a minus 140 against Devin Clark. I think it's just recency bias, and that's why the line is the way it is. Obviously, that's why lines are set that way. If I was a betting man, I would have no problem with Anthony Smith at minus whatever it was, minus 150.
Rob brings up a great question about Kai Kamaka. Is he worth the price?
No, that's what we brought up, right? I mean, like, it's going to be a firefight. Like, that screams firefight. I mean, he does have takedowns in his back pocket. Like, the stats for both of these guys are crazy. Averaging 5 takedowns per 15 minutes for Kamaka, 4.48. It could literally come down to a cardio battle. Who has the better conditioning? I don't know who has the better conditioning. I don't hate Kamaka, because what I saw on film, right, on Kamaka, and what I remember from the Tony Kelly fight, he didn't look like a guy who only had 13% finish rate. He looked like a killer. And Pierce did not really look good against Joe Lozon. Granted, that's one performance in the his Contender Series fight. Prior to that, actually looked pretty damn good. And I was actually a little worried for Joe Lozon going into that fight.
Brad asked, who is a better low in play, Parker Porter or Jonathan Pierce on DraftKings, or maybe both?
I think they're in the same category. I put Porter, Pierce, and Gordon kind of in that same bubble of GPP underdogs. Like, I don't hate any of them. They're all in play. Of the three, though, that I think is most likely to get a win, I go Pierce.
Next up, Tim asks, Martin Day or Miguel Baeza, DraftKings GPP?
Going Day, man. I'm heavy on Day. Now, he could go out there and get knocked out. I have seen Day dropped and not KO'd, but dropped and rocked several times in his fights, and Dos Santos hits hard. The thing is Day's going to be 5 inches taller than Dos Santos. Not only does he bring a volume boxing approach, 5.39 strikes per minute, but that 5.39 strikes per minute, Jason, includes some great Taekwondo kicks. We literally could see a head kick knockout from Martin Day against Dos Santos. And I just think he puts it all together. Backs against the wall, needs a win. I think he does it.
Cody asks, who has a higher upside on DraftKings, Mudarji or Parisian?
My problem with Mudarji, right, is he hits Gordon under 20 times and finishes him, because Gordon gets rocked so quickly. Parisian, Porter's a really, really, really tough. So I think Parisian probably has a higher upside of possibly rocking him on the feet, then finishing him on the ground and transferring and advancing.
Dylan says, Martin Day or Spike Carlisle FanDuel cash?
Day for me.
By the way, the prelims start here in about 30 minutes or so. Of course, the prelim start time did change once we lost the fight yesterday with Curtis Blades and Derek Lewis. Do you have any interest in this Mike Tyson Roy Jones fight? So people keep asking in the chat.
Not really. I don't really, and I love both fighters. And It's not something that I don't know. I wouldn't be paying $50 for it.
I think boxing missed out on an opportunity here. Why do we have Jake Paul, Nate Robinson as your co-main event?
Yeah, I think, that's definitely why people probably like, okay, well, that fight, it doesn't really move the needle for me. I know there are plenty of people that are backing the Paul brothers of their following, but that kind of makes me not want to get it.
I just feel like you could have, it would been a great opportunity to put some up and coming boxers and give them some shine and potentially, allow them potentially get the rub off of a Tyson Jones. I mean, look, we can crap on Bellator when they did those quote unquote legend fights, but what they always do, they always put young and up and coming fighters on it.
Yeah, I can't ever hate on Bellator. I love Bellator.
I think Emmanuel Sanchez was like on every one of those cards.
Yeah, I know.
By the way, if you do have any questions, you're a premium member of Awesemo, you can hit those up in the premium Slack account. We will get to those as we do go on throughout this show. Let's see here. Can you see Spike losing due to his aggressiveness?
Yeah, he's a guy that kind of throws caution to the wind, which is good when it's going well. But if somebody has the answers, if somebody is a little too sharp for that, and they can take advantage of your mistakes, you can run into something, whether it's a submission or running into a punch. I definitely put Spike Carlisle in that category of being reckless.
Kevin asked thoughts on Sumadarji's upside.
It's good. I mean, he's fighting a guy that doesn't like to get hit, and he's a knockout artist. 92% finish rate. Don't hate him at 9,100.
William checking back in. He says, not sure if he answered my super chat. Had disconnect as soon as I sent it about top fighter to fade on both sides. Just want to kind of rehash on what you said a little while ago about that.
Well, I mentioned that, of the 9K options, right? If we were looking at it and backing it up with data, Parisian at 9,000 has a 92% finish rate. Kamaka at 9,200 has a 13% finish rate, so that is definitely in the red zone. Muderji at 9,100 has a 92% finish rate. So of those three high targets, to answer your question, if I used the heat sheet as a tiebreaker, I would probably eliminate Kamaka and fade that one.
Yeah, someone actually asked me about Sato's corner, and just.
Well, that's a good question. Of Henry Hooft, right?
Yeah, well, based on his Instagram, Henry Hooft hasn't posted anything, so what I haven't seen a list of the seconds for tonight's fights.
Yeah, usually don't.
If you don't see Henry Hooft and Greg Jones in the corner, that to me tells me Nevada is honoring those suspensions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sato or Miguel Baeza, I'm on the Baeza side.
Yeah, I'm favoring Baeza in that situation.
Let's see here. By the way, I am at the bottom of the YouTube chat now, so I've worked my way through it. So maybe if I missed your question, fire those back in YouTube, and we will get through there. I'll get your question if maybe I missed it as we do go forward. As we're here for the next 30 minutes, of course, be sure to smash that like button right here on YouTube. Of course, if you're not subscribed to Awesemo here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you know when a new video is live. Pick two underdogs to win.
Well, I will say I'll go Pierce. Since I have to, I'm answering the question, right? I have to. I'll say Pierce and Algeo.
Next question we have is thoughts on Norma Dumont, and we talked about this Wednesday. The biggest, the tough part about breaking her down, and you mentioned it several times, it's just there's a lack of film out there.
Yeah, I just don't know. And I'm not afraid to say when I don't know. And instead of making some stuff up, I just tell you what I know. And guess what? I don't know. I don't know anything about her. I looked at some fight film. I actually watched a grappling match of her. she looked okay, but like I think she matches up okay against Evan Smith. Evan Smith has the UFC advantage, obviously the experience, 3-4 in the UFC, 4 losses, but guess what? That's okay. Dumont on pads looks okay on Instagram, but you can't really translate that to a fight always. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I'm taking a wait and see approach. Maybe Dumont's like this Brazilian underground superstar that nobody knows about. There's a reason she's in the UFC, right? Like she either knows somebody or somebody's really touting her like, hey, look at this girl's a killer in the gym. That's how you get into the UFC. And, we might know after tonight.
James says, hate the first fight of the night, but Sanders or Manis?
I'm sorry, say it again.
James, he's in full agreement with me. Hates the first fight of the night, but Luke Sanders or Joseph Manis?
Yeah, Sanders. If I'd hate that fight.
Yeah. Dylan asks, he says women in optimal, which I would take that as saying that will a women's fight be in the optimal lineup? I don't know about GPP, but I would say cash.
I'm going to say no.
We always bring a point. I mean, it's the rate of female fights going the distance. It's north of 50%. It's a much higher rate than men's fights. Malcolm asking how we like this line: Mudarji, Baeza, Ostovich, Evan Smith, Santos, and Carlisle for DraftKings GPP. I'm not big on Spike Carlisle in this spot. I think he's a little overpriced for my liking.
Yeah. What's the do you happen to have the ownership in front of you of what potentially maybe Carlisle is like a leverage play because Algeo is coming in pretty popular, I would imagine.
Spike Carlisle is the 5th highest.
Wow. Holy moly.
Algeo's down there. I tell you, he's got some good ownership projections right now.
Wow. That's interesting. Maybe people, you know why? Because people are stacking that fight, I would imagine.
Could be.
They're sharp. They're sharp.
Says I probably missed it, but are we stacking the main event in cash on DraftKings?
Main event stack is always viable in cash. Like it really is. The problem is does Clark get a win? I don't think he does. And in a loss, does he outperform Porter, Sato, Algeo, Dos Santos, Dumont, Ostovich, Pierce? Like there's so many 7K options. I'd rather just take my chances elsewhere.
Next up, by the way, the fights do start here in 25 minutes from now, right here at the top of the hour. Miles says, is Manis too risky at one dart throw at MVP on FanDuel?
Wow. Yeah, that's a super risky one. I mean, if you enjoy having things by your lonesome and kind of like, if it works out, you're going to shoot up to the top. I'm not really on Manis at all. I can't hate you if you do it though. Like that's how people win GPPs, right? Doing the unthinkable, but it's a no for me, dog.
Top 11 says Mazzani is 1-4 in the UFC. Why do you think she would be a favorite?
Because of what we talked about prior of how she's dropping down a weight class from 135 pounds to 125 pounds. A lot of people think that translates into insta success. She's cornered and coached by James Krause, one of the best minds in the business at Glory MMA. She splits her time between Vegas and Glory. Seems like she's been working a lot at Glory this camp. The girl looks shredded and looks good. And I think people are just kind of favoring the fact of the size and the reach advantage as well. Mazzani is going to be a taller, longer fighter than Ostovich, comes in 6-inch reach advantage. But I still think that Mazzani makes so many mistakes.
Mike asks you, he says, Pete, you have 150 GPP lineups. Who's your highest owned fighter and why?
Martin Day.
Wow.
Now I could be wrong on that, but I like what I'm seeing on film. It's actually, and I should say it's like close between Parisian and Day. Like I like them both quite a bit.
Brian asks, he goes, in general, how do you judge fighters coming into the UFC for the first time? How big of a jump is it truly to the UFC?
Yeah, so I mean, we have only one person making their UFC debut, and it's technically Parisian, but I really wouldn't throw him in that category because he's had Ultimate Fighter experience, multiple Contender Series fights. Um, Parisian will have that edge of not having the crowd and kind of, you know what I mean? So like I don't think it applies to him, but generally UFC jitters are a real thing and some people use it to their advantage or they crumble under the pressure. I'm okay with pumping the brakes on UFC debutants and just kind of just like just waiting a little bit. But Parisian isn't in that category for me.
We talked about this last week, the comment that Colin Oyama made about Alex Perez, where he felt that, he said, he goes, he really feels that the Contender Series is a great way to make your way to the UFC because it puts yourself in a pressure situation. You're fighting in front of Dana White. You're fighting in front of Mick Maynard. You're fighting in front of Sean Shelby. So it gives you that. So sometimes when you've had fighters like a Josh Parisian who's gone through that circle, I kind of feel like they that pressure's already been there, that it's, yes, the jitters are real, but they're not as big as they may be if you just fought in LFA, for example.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, and I can speak from experience with this where, when I fought for Bellator, obviously the nerves and everything are heightened, like it's the big show. And then once you're there for a little bit, you kind of get accustomed to it. And then like for me, I went regionally after that. And it's kind of like, man, this is like elementary compared to middle school or high school. You know what I mean? Like it feels like you're at AAA, like playing with AAA. And, I do think that Parisian has that, edge and experience where he's going to come in, calm and collected.
Yeah. Let's go over to our premium Slack account. It goes, this is from Chicken Dinner 1970. He goes, so Pete said he thinks the female fights don't make the optimal GPP, but with only 10 fights, if you're playing GPPs, you're eliminating 20% of the available fights. If playing 100 GPP lineups, would you really have no female fights, or would you have have some, and if so, how many?
Yeah, so like for me, right, I maxed the 150 tonight. We'll see how it works. I'm excited, but I didn't take away so many, female fighters from my lineups at all. I just kind of limited to what I had. And I think I ended up with a decent amount out of 150. I think on some of them, I was like 25, 30% on some. So like personally, I don't have a good feeling about the women's MMA matchups tonight, but I know that the Mizani Ostovic, they make so many mistakes that could happen. And when you have an unknown fighter fighting Evan Smith, if Dumont is horrible, Evan Smith could literally go out there and destroy her at 8,300. She could be underpriced.
Zane has this question for you, Pete. He says, does Ostovic get finished in the first round? If so, submission or TKO?
Well, let's go. Let's go to Gina Mazzani's record. Let's do that. She's 6-4 overall, Jason. This girl has fought all the way up to 155 pounds. That is crazy. So she's going to be a big girl, but she has a few round one wins. King of the Cage, Alaska FC, if that really means anything.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, right.
That is a bad regional. Yeah, that's that. Yeah.
I don't think Ostovic is bad. Like, I really don't think Ostovic is bad at all. I can see a later finish. I don't really see a round one, but we'll have to see, right?
It's like we said on the strategy show. I truly believe the UFC wants Ostovic to win here. Because, I mean, she's come out this weekend basically said, if I lose, I know my days in the UFC are probably over and potentially her fighting career.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's the plan here. I really do. Jason, you know what I'm like curious about is how many of our listeners have done some sort of martial art, whether they have, trained before or how they got into MMA or if they just like making money. I'm curious. Throw them in the comments.
I bet it's 50-50.
Yeah.
I bet it's 50-50. Next up, this is Andrew says, can Gordon catch those Majuri kicks and take this fight to Takedown City?
Yeah, so it's a good point. when you are fighting a grappler or a wrestler, you have to be careful and you have to have shot selection, as my dad calls it. You have to have shot selection. So obviously the number one thing to somewhat eliminate is a tie kick to the thigh. So a low kick, right? You have to either make it higher or you have to make it lower, because if you literally just kick somebody in the thigh, that's basically a double leg entrant right there. So like they can literally enter in for a quick double leg or snatch up that leg and work a single. So it's a great comment. And if Gordon is smart, he would take advantage of the kicks.
Next up, our next question. Benzel says Sue or Parisian?
Parisian for me. I don't hate Sue though.
Yeah, I'd feel the same way. On that one, does Baeza outscore the winner of Clark and Smith?
I don't think so.
It's a good one though. It's a good
It
one.
It is a good one. It's a good question. I love the questions.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is like, what is the ceiling for Miguel Baeza?
Well, I mean,
115, 125?
Maybe. I mean, let's go on a data. Okay, let's look. So on the Contender Series, right? One unanimous decision over Victor Reina through 61 significant strikes, had 2 knockdowns, 0 takedowns. Okay, that's not the best output. Miguel Baeza won in the second round against Hector Aldana, 35 significant strikes, 1 knockdown, 1 via TKO. That's okay. Like, you need a second round or earlier to really pay off, because he doesn't have crazy high volume. Miguel Baeza against Matt Brown, 2 knockdowns, 37 significant strikes, and a knockout in the second round. So that's okay. That's suitable, but nothing later than that.
Next up, can Martin Day outscore the winner of Clark and Smith?
Martin Day is going to kill it today, and Martin Day might be my pick of the day, for lack of a better term. I really like him, man, and I've hit on the Romanov, I've hit on Tom Aspinall, and sometimes when I feel like bullish on a fighter, I'm okay with being aggressive about it. And that's how I'm feeling with Martin Day. Now, it's not an easy fight, and Martin Day does have chin questions, but I like Martin Day here.
Next up, James says, so do you think Anthony Smith over Devin Clark at MVP on FanDuel?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, look, I believe Devin Clark's going to be going for a ton of takedowns, so you might be able to rack up some points there for Anthony Smith and stopping takedowns. More DFS points, Spike Carlisle, Martin Day, or Anthony Smith? Well, we know where you're going.
Yeah, so, I'm confident in Day, and, he was looking amazing, and Machiavelli brings up a great point of how can I be confident in him when, Davey Grant knocked him out. But up until that point, right, Martin Day looked very good. Davey Grant just hit a massive left hook. So a lot of people in a lot of the field will be siding with Dos Santos. And I'm kind of taking that leverage, and I'm going to play Day as a leverage play, because I know Dos Santos is going to be pretty heavily owned. I have him quite a bit in my 150, but he is at 8,800, and even in a decision win has to do a lot. We'll have to see.
Of course, if you're looking to make a bet on the fights and you want to see who's got the best lines out there, you got to go to Awesemo.com right there at the top of the screen. Check out Odds Shopper. Maybe you want to have Anthony Smith by KO, TKO. Right now, over you've got plus 290 is the best line out there. So all you got to do is go over to Awesemo.com right there at the top screen. Check out Odds Shopper, and you can see when, wherever you want to place your bets, get the best line out there right there at Odds Shopper over at Awesemo.com. Dylan says, safe to fade the main event in GPP. I don't know. Can you fade the... I can see why you could potentially fade on DraftKings. I don't know how you fade on FanDuel.
Yeah, FanDuel makes it a little difficult, right? I mean, the worst thing that could happen is a low volume Clark presses Smith against the cage for 2 rounds, and then in the third, Smith lands 40 significant strikes or something and knocks him out in the third or something like that. Like, let's look at this. Let me see. Okay, here. And you can't always look at this, right? Third round victory for Anthony Smith against Hector Lombard. That was quite some time ago. It was 3 years ago. 35 significant strikes, 1 knockdown, third round finish. If that happens tonight, he's not going to, to outperform his salary, really. It's kind of just going to be a push. Yeah. But I do like him here. I have the main event more than I don't.
It's like you always say, the main event, you hate a fight that ends in the third round. It's just, it's usually not the best for DFS. Thomas asks, who will the 25-foot cage help more in the main event?
Clark, I would imagine.
Yeah, you would think so. Osovich or Mazzani win.
I wish that fight got scrapped.
That it's just because we're looking at it from a DFS perspective. And I'm more interested in the value of Ostovich at $7,611 as opposed to the salary of Mazzani at $8,619.
Yeah, I agree.
If Mazzani was, $8,400, $8,300, I think I'd have more interest in her in this spot.
Yeah, I agree.
Is Sanders cash viable on DraftKings? My answer is yes.
I think yes. I think it's a great question. I mean, that is a hell of a question. The way you guys come up with these questions, man, like seriously, like good research. Like that's a great one.
Malcolm mentioned he's asking about he goes about COVID test and potentially a fight canceling after lock. FYI, all the fighters were tested yesterday. So by the time the fight card gets here, they already know whether there is a positive test or not. They're doing.
That's why we got Jason in here, because Jason knows the ins and the outs of the commissions and this and that. I love it. I mean, like that's why you got a great perspective here, guys, and we appreciate you.
Next up, I think you kind of answered this question, but I'll ask just in case about why you're so high on Martin Day.
Okay, so like obviously when I'm playing 150, right? I'm spreading out and I'm getting maybe a little aggressive in some spots. I'm not trying to, for me personally, this is how I play. I'm not trying to cover every single base because like, I'm probably not that smart with fantasy crunchers. So like I automatically eliminate some fighters that I have virtually no interest in. And from a stylistic standpoint, right? Like Martin Day, let me pull up some stats for you guys, because I know you guys love it when I back up some stats. Martin Day in his fight against Ping-Wan Liu, okay? 3-round split decision loss, 100 significant strikes, a takedown, went for 2 submissions, had a knockdown. Like, Martin Day is very good. He's hungry for a win. Like, he really is. It all comes down to how healed is he from suffering that pig knockout loss to Davey Grant. So a lot of people will pump the brakes, and I think it's an ownership play for me. Like, I think Martin Day is going to be one of the most overlooked fighters on the slate, hence why I'm trying to be aggressive in a stance like that. I do think that he has the style to beat a smaller Dos Santos, though. I really do.
Sean asked this question on Twitter. He says, Day and Evan Smith or Parisian Ostovich FanDuel cash?
Oh, hold on. Day and Evan Smith.
Or Parisian and Ostovich.
Gosh, why you got to give me one good person and one bad person in each?
I would say Day and Evan Smith.
I would agree with that. And the only reason I have any pause for that response is obviously the concerns of Dumont, Evan Smith. Like, I wish I knew more about Dumont, but I don't feel bad about Evan Smith.
Diaz Baeza winning outscore Clark Smith winner. We kind of discussed this a little bit earlier. I'd probably lean no.
What is it?
Does Baeza winning outscore Clark Smith winner?
I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
And if you roster Martin Day, right, and he comes through, like, tag me or something, because
Yeah.
like I think
Uh,
this is a bold claim. Now, obviously tread carefully and be careful, but I think it's like a nice leverage spot.
Mike asked me who's my highest owned GPP fighter and why. I want to say it's Anthony Smith off the top of my head. Look, it's because it's 5 rounds. It is a big reason for me. Look, I think the key is he's got to keep his back off the fence. That's where Devin Clark wants this fight. If he can keep this a fight at range and make this a kickboxing matchup, I think it's Anthony Smith's fight to lose all day long.
Agreed.
Top 11 says he goes, I'm probably going to place a bet on the over 2.5 rounds on Day and Dos Santos. Thoughts?
Yeah, I like that. That's a nice one.
Let's see here. Damn YouTube when it just automatically scrolls down. So now it's like, okay, where was I at here in the chat? Two. Okay, here it goes. Pierce and Clark or Algeo and Dos Santos. And by the way, he mentions in the Clark lineup, he has Anthony Smith in that lineup. So it's basically you're saying stack the main event and Jonathan Pierce.
Don't stack that.
Dumont or Smith. I'm guessing has to be meaning Evan Smith. To me, I because of the lack of footage on Dumont, her missing weight and how much weight she had to cut to try to make 35. To me, it's Evan Smith.
Yeah, give me the fighter I actually know something about.
Do you think punting Pierce and getting Parisian, Sue, Day, and Smith will be worth the punt of Pierce? So you're talking Josh Parisian, Sue Mudarji, Martin Day, and Anthony Smith.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah. Anthony. Someone says Anthony Smith on FanDuel. The $16, and obviously because of what happened yesterday, it's. I don't know how you avoid the main event on FanDuel. I really don't.
I agree.
MVP on FanDuel. We kind of talked about some of the options there. I think Anthony Smith will be the fighter that's getting the most, but I would look at Baeza, Mudarji, and Parisian.
Yeah, I mean, I think I planted my flag enough. I think you guys know that I like Martin Day. So obviously, if he doesn't do well, a lot of my lineups don't do well. I have him in my one FanDuel lineup at captain in the MVP spot. I think that's a nice spot. And just to kind of elaborate on that, I saw Miles put in there a couple times saying you're going overweight in 150 lineups on Day. What percentage would you play Day in out of 10 lineups? I would say in that 4 to 5 range, or 3 to 4 range. Just kind of mix it up, not being too aggressive out of 10 lineups. The smaller amount of lineups, you definitely want to kind of have exposure other places.
Next up is Algeo and Spike a stack crazy fight.
Yeah, it's one of the fights you definitely can stack. We got 5 minutes, Jason. Oh boy.
A lot of people in chat talking about how they train martial arts there, Pete.
I know. I love it. That's cool. A lot of people say, nope, just like money. I like that too. I like both.
Comment in the chat saying that with Blades off this card, a lot of people pivoted to Josh Parisian. So is Parker Porter contrarian?
Yes, it's a great pick. What was Blades' price?
9,300.
9,300.
And then and he was 23 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think the Kamaka, Mudarji, Parisian, obviously it's going to be heavy at the top. So 7K options are always a contrarian play.
Machiavelli brings up a point about Martin Day. He says, how can you be confident Day when he got destroyed by Davey Grant?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about that a little bit. I mean, Davey Grant, I think, doesn't get so much respect. And I don't think that Davey Grant's horrible by any means. I mean, Davey Grant, has a ton of fights. Davey Grant has a win over Marlon Vera. like, let's not kind of hold that over Martin Day's head too much. I mean, to think that Davey Grant destroyed Marlon Vera, unanimous decision, 72 significant strikes, 1 takedown. Marlon Vera had 23 significant strikes and a takedown. I need to watch that fight. Like, I can't believe that when I'm just saying that right now.
Sterling asks, Dumont, Ostovich, or Algeo?
Algeo, I guess.
Yeah. Is there anyone you are 100% fading?
No. Maybe. Who did I fade?
Dumont?
I might have faded. Nah, I still think I got like 7 lineups with Dumont.
Day. This is a DraftKings single entry question. Day and Clark or Smith and Evans Smith? That's
in that situation, despite my love for Day, I would say Smith and Evan Smith.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about that potential combination on the strategy show.
Yeah, I did, right? Didn't I say, Smith and Smith, just do it?
You did. Pierce or Dos Santos for a GPP?
Pierce.
Someone mentioned about Malcolm Gore win by submission. If he's going to win, that's the way it's going to happen.
I would agree. Like if you're playing prop bets, throw something on that because if he wins, that's how.
Of course, we appreciate everyone that's been in here in the chat throughout the show. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button as you do exit the show here. Of course, it is time for UFC Fight Night, Smith versus Clark. Never thought I would say that. Never thought I would say that, but it is coming up here. So, of course, you can follow Pete and myself on Twitter. He's at Pete the Heat MMA. I am at Jason_Floyd. Of course, we'll be hopping in and out of the Slack channel here throughout the fight. So, for our premium subscribers, we will be chatting with you throughout the fight. So, Pete, any last comments before we get out of here?
No, I just want to say thank you guys for joining us tonight. Thank you guys for the support. I mean, since quarantine happened, we have such a great following and we enjoy this, man, so good luck to everybody. Share those screenshots, hit us up through social media, and let's go enjoy some fights. I cannot wait. It's finally here.
Finally. And we'll be back on Wednesday for the strategy show as we will get you ready for UFC Vegas number 16. So that's going to do it for MMA Live 4 Lock right here on Awesemo.com.